dominant forms of hip hop, fin, bubblegum like, hollow, shallow, stimulating body, no stirring no soul, which is very, very sad because young people need soul stirring music.
Yo, what up? Luxurious.
Drums and ammo.
Ghetto. Gifted. Embada.
It's Embada, baby.
Check.
You.
Hey.
What it does?
How you doing?
I'm chilling. Just listening to this Grand National.
That's the shit.
Oh, yeah, you on it, huh?
Yeah, that's them is Tajay folks. Kevin Allen,
Yeah.
formerly known as
Young Urk. Man.
the Jerk.
But you know what though? It's like he's one of them dudes I felt like he got a hit and it was almost like it jumped in front of the fact that he was one of those, like official, like on some MC, producer.
Yep.
And now it feels like he's trying to get back and like let me sequence this the right way. Like I'm one of them real rap cats. Like I really get busy. You know what I mean? Not like I'm trying to get that one hit song and act. It's crazy when you think about that. Like that cat had I don't know if it was all over the world like that, but at least in the Bay, he was one of those. He had one of those official ones, and he kind of, instead of running after it, he kind of fell back. Like, man, I'm cool. I got to show cats I'm about this, trying to get busy for real.
You know what's funny about him is I know him most as a photographer. I like his work as a photographer. To me, is the height of his creativity that I've seen or heard. Like I think he's a dope musician. I think he's a dope MC. He's definitely a personality and he's a factor in the Bay. But to me, the photography is it. And I think some people have no idea that was even him taking those pictures. So I think that's supposed to show. I know we're going to talk about like Bay Area stuff today, but to me, that's the key highlight about the Bay is that you might think somebody is one thing. Like some people think Tajay is rap. They think Tajay is a rapper. Like that's all he does is he composes mischief and he raps. That's not even the 1/100th of him and what he does. And you reveal these layers by layers, and you're like, oh, he has a degree and he's a architectural designer now, and he works for a business in Emeryville where he literally like designs and helps to rebuild homes, and he draws them and he does all the. It's like, yo, how can you be so ill and so smart at so many things all at once?
Yeah, like official, like not even just cool, like you're all the way there with it. Like each one, you like knocking them out there. You know what I'm saying? Anyway,
yeah,
that's the homie. That's the homie. So we about to get into it. So this is something I've been trying to plot on this one for a minute. So I'm happy, but finally, I guess this is the Zoom theory is how it's gonna go down. But it's cool though. Are you like Zoom? Like up? Do you feel like you're up to like the standards? Like have you just adopted it, over the whole thing? Because I'm having a hard. I'm still like, you know what I'm saying? Like
I've done some corporate ass Zoom calls. I've done some, I do like focus groups and market research and stuff like that. So that's been my training. This is my first hip hop Zoom, for sure.
Oh,
and so I'm excited because I'm like, okay. And you know what's funny? You know me, I am never late to nothing. I'm always religiously early. But when you turn me into the talent, it's like I might as well be a rapper. My shit is all over.
Like,
I haven't had breakfast. I don't know where the Zoom link is at. I was like, oh, I see now how it works. They're not trying to be ridiculous. It's just something that happens when you become the talent. Like I am a mess. I'm a mess. My breakfast is right here. I haven't eaten it. I hadn't had my coffee. I was all over the place. I'm running around a mess. Just a mess.
Oh man, that's all love.
Now I get it. Now I get it. Why the rappers is always late. I get it now.
So, the DJ's got to be on time, straight up. You live and die by, yeah, you know what I'm saying, straight up. So, I'm on that DJ time, straight up, man. Like, I might pick up
on the Zoom screen. Oh no. Oh well.
What's up?
It says my government name on the Zoom
screen.
Yeah, it's good.
Which
though.
you gotta,
It's
but
Googleable.
that okay.
It's
which
Googleable.
Is the perfect way into the work. So this is DJ Ambush. This is This, That, and the Third podcast. I'm sitting with the old school homie. We met, well, I heard your name floated around in my world for about 2 years before we actually probably met. So you were like the Phantom. You were like just like the name that was just like, oh, make this happen. You know, it was just like you were the go-to for a few of my folks. You know what I mean? And kind of mentored and just did a bunch of things. And I hadn't really met you. And it was just one of the things I'm like, damn, man, like at some point I need to meet because I need to know what's happening. Because it's like, and then it evolves and it goes like, oh, then it gets from just some of the homies that I know, then it opens up to like Hyro. And it's like, oh, damn, this is like, it's crazy because her name was, you know, floating around here. Now I see it's bigger and it's kind of like, then it's just expanded. And when I met you, I think it was around the time after King Ghidorah dropped. It was through the homie Trunks MC, and that was the name that he was the one that, you know, before I met you, he was the one just kept your name in the air like, and then when you brought the King Ghidorah verse to fruition, and I recorded the verse, you know what I mean, like. So
I never knew that. I never knew that.
Ooh, see, I got you over there. So I recorded the verse, and we like, man, dude, this is crazy. You know, like for us and our crew at that time, that was you know what I mean? It was like, it wasn't like the Doom that came to be, you know, what he is now, but he was still he was kind of in the heat of his evolution. Like he was still like, that was one of those like, oh, this Doom is, you know, this is a new name on the scene, but if you have some history, you start putting it together. So you're like, oh, KMD, and you know. So at that point, Trunks getting on that song was a big deal. And we was like, oh, damn, who put that together? At that time, it was Miranda Jane. And I remember, even before we met, I stumbled on an interview you did on Hip Hop Game. It was the longest interview. I read that interview for about 3 days. I mean, for real, it was like it was like a little, it was literally like I remember reading it for at least 2 days, like, you know what I mean? And I had my daughter and she would be sleep, and I read it while she was sleeping. Like it was official though. It was one of the first like interviews I remember reading and just really just being like, do you remember that one?
Hip Hop Game, 7:30, Brian, 7:30. I remember him very, very well, very closely. Yeah, that was after all the drama at the Source magazine. And so a lot of times after that time, a lot of people wanted to talk to me about the Source and the sexual harassment lawsuit and Benzino and all that stuff. And he touched on a couple of those little things or whatever, but he actually had done his history and he realized like, yo, this lady's affiliated with so many different deep hip hop crews. And he was like, I heard that you went to Queensbridge with Gaddafi. Yes, it is true. Or I heard that you did this with Zev Love X and KMD and Doom and Grim. Is it true? Yeah, it is true. Or I heard that you're the lady who did this and that with Hyro and this and that. Yeah, that too. Among many other things, among many record label things and magazine things and music business things. And it's a trip because that meeting that when you first started talking, that meeting was Trunks, me, Tajay, you, and Zaman, Z Maney, Z Dazzle, Z Man. He was there at that meeting at Hyro. You were there for that, right? This was the meeting when we were discussing a deal for Trunks via Tajay's entity at the Hyro building, because I have pictures. Were you there for that day? That was the day I met you, or no?
No, that wasn't the day we met though. No, that was and that gets into what's happening, man. That gets into another. Before we we starting to hold up. Let me get back in the intro. But you just brought up another point for my intro. I mean, to what so you brought us to a meeting, and I think this was for Trunks. You brought him there, and we talked about Audible Treats, and we talked about a bunch of other stuff. From that meeting, though, and this is more like the introduction and how you you affected my life, like on a whole different, like you didn't even know. So from that meeting, no, no. There had to be two meetings because there was a meeting in around 2009, 2010 that we went, or maybe 8, no, 9, 10, 8, whatever, whatever. And within the first decade, 2010, we had a meeting and we talked about Audible Treats, and that was after I had started my label with the homies, Sweetbreads.
Yeah.
So we had first put out one project, and then we had that meeting, and you were like, Audible Treats is what we need. So I went back to the homies and was like, hey, man, dude, I mean, I just came from the Hyro building, and the homegirl she was just talking about Audible Treats. I don't know, man. I mean, let's try, we put out one project. We thought we did what we can do. Let's put out another one and put a little bit more extra, see what it does. So Audible Treats was the extra that we put on it, which set us off to be, I mean, we didn't blow up or anything, but we did good. We had a great run as, Sweetbreads Creative Collective. We put out Da Vinci and, we traveled, but it was based off of us making that one little turn. Like we just took it and we're like, man, let's try this one thing. You know what I mean? I don't even, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, we just put that one tweak, Audible Treats, and it just, and the next thing you know what I mean? We flying and we doing our thing, and Da Vinci's getting his profile up, and we started the label and went on for, almost 5 years. So, that was just another way that, like you changed the course of history. And I'm sure there's hella little stories of that, where, like you just shifted a little bit and things come to fruition, unknowingly. But so,
yeah, when
I met you, you were Miranda Jane. Now it's Walasia.
Yep.
You want to, how is the transition? And before we even get into that, she's a product of two, renowned musicians, players, so I'm sure that's played a part in your growth and everything. So first break down, like I met you in the Miranda Jane era. So yep. Break down how we get to Walasia.
Okay. Well, before I ever got to the Bay Area, okay, well, first I was born at home, and I was born in Laurel Canyon, which is in the Hollywood Hills. And my father was already a very successful and renowned jazz musician and classical musician. And he had been in the game since, I want to say 1949 or some ridiculous back in the like that, because he had been doing classical music since he was a child prodigy, basically. So by the time I came around, that was 1974, and he was, they were living in the hills, and also living in the hills at that time was like Jerry Garcia and his family, and he had a daughter named Trixie. And so my dad used to jam with Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead, and Trixie and I used to play on the floor together as toddlers crawling around. Later on, Trixie ended up being one of a girlfriend or a friend of Dell and a friend of Flea A+. And, she was in the circle, and she had paintings and stuff. So I remember one time I went to Flea's house to study, because we used to have a study group there. And there was a painting, and the painting caught me, and I kept looking at the painting, and I looked at the signature, and I couldn't figure out. And I said, "Please, what's this painting right here?" And he was like, "Oh, the homegirl Trixie made that." And I was like, "Trixie?" And he was like, "Trixie Garcia, Jerry Garcia's daughter." And then I was like, I didn't even know at that time the stories about she and I, being little tiny babies together like that while our parents were jamming. So then I didn't find that out until like my father had almost passed away, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. He passed away in 2017. Wow. So a little bit before that, I found out the majority of the history of things like that. And so it was like one day it would be that, and then another day I would be at my father's house. My parents separated when I was about 5. And so my father's house was on one side of the hill and my mother's house was on the other. So I would be at my father's on the weekend, and all of a sudden you would hear people coming up the stairs, and you would open the door. And one time, I'll never forget this, it was Wendy and Lisa from Prince's band, The Revolution. Because Wendy Melvoin, her father is a famous jazz arranger and player. So I guess her father had come to jam with my dad or practice a rehearsal or something. And then there were other band members too. But the jazz people, I was always a little kid, and there was always the most famous jazz people ever coming through to the pad. I'm not knowing who they are. I just know everybody comes in, they smoke hella weed, they play the same song. It's like a 2-hour song. They play it like 3 times, and then they go home. That's all I know as a little child, you know. But by that time, I was of the age. I was a massive Prince fan. And when she came through the door, I was like, yo, like that's Wendy and Lisa from the Revolution. Like, they're in my house. I'm a little kid, but you know? And so growing up in Laurel Canyon, you had that dichotomy, because like my father, he played quote unquote black music, the majority, but he played also quote unquote white music, classical music, which is not, it's black music too, but it's gotten all effed up in the history. He played bluegrass, all these musical styles that you would associate with white folks. And then the majority of his career was jazz, R&B, soul. He played with the O'Jays, Tower of Power, Earth, Wind and Fire. He toured with them. Yo, right before he passed away, he told me the craziest Barry White stories, oh my God, about how Barry White would come to the studio with his entourage, and he had one assistant for his perm and another assistant for his cape. That only person could only carry his cape and make sure his cape was right. And when he was ready to leave the studio, that the cape was correct with the suit and everything else. And then the other person was there to touch up his perm, his process. To make sure, you know, that it didn't get sweated out in the studio, or if it did, they would like touch up the edge and keep it dry. Can you imagine that's the job on your resume, is that you're the keeper of Barry White's cape, or that you're there to make sure that his perm doesn't go asunder and go back and it stays straight and fly when he walks out of the studio? Like, these kind of stories. I was like, why am I only hearing these things when it's almost too late? And it was too late. I never recorded not one thing, and not one anecdote that my father finally told me. Not only the Barry White story, but then I found out that my father played bass in the whole entire Eagles Hotel California album session. My father's the only person playing bass on that whole album and the song. Yo, I grew up listening to that song religiously. No one in my house played that song. No one said that's your father playing the bass. Nobody, I never knew until I was 42 or 43 years old, and I'm 46 now. Stop playing, and we could spend a million hours talking just about that guy.
Just about that. Whoa.
But to bring it to hip hop, growing up with all those people, and it does give you chills, because you're like, yo, we're talking about like the Grateful Dead, we're talking about Prince and the Revolution, we're talking about Barry White. These are not small names that we're talking about. But so my first job was slanging frozen yogurt. I was 13. I had to get a special paper that my parents had to sign so I could work minimum wage right down there on Sunset at the bottom of the hill. So my job was just serving penguins frozen yogurt and cleaning the yogurt machines like any other teenager who's getting their first job. But in the door, you have coming Ice-T with Darlene with the Ferrari in front, or the Lambo. You have Evil E pulling up with the all black Benz with the gold details on it. And he comes in with big chains. And they're ordering yogurt and brownies like anyone else. But I'm like, yo, like, I'm selling yogurt to like the royalty, like the epitome. They also lived in my neighborhood, and I would see them frequently, to where I even knew which cars they had and when. I lived above my one house, and Evil E was down at the bottom by my daddy house. And then the Beastie Boys moved into the neighborhood later. And there's an article about that particular experience of growing up in the hills and the Beasties being around that I wrote recently for their anniversary. That's on my Medium. So we can get those stuff later. But it was this dichotomy, because I was always around all these famous people of all these different genres. But then it's like, what is fame? Because even people now, sometimes they're like, oh, I rap, you don't know my name, you don't know who I am. And I'm like, well, no, not yet. Not because I maybe haven't heard your music, or I maybe haven't heard of you. There's so many genres and subgenres of rap, and so many people rapping all around the world. And I try to keep up to the best of my ability. And you know, I listen to Shady Nate, and when I turn that off, I listen to Rose Royce, and when I turn that off, I might be listening to Dell's first album, and when that goes off, it might be Tina Marie, and that goes off, it could be John Coltrane, A Love Supreme. That's my day. That's my day every day. And so it's like I have this weird like mixture of everything, but what's famous to me is like Wendy and Lisa, or Mikhail Baryshnikov sitting across from us in the restaurant when we go to random dinner on Sunday, because of the way I grew up. It's like, what is saying? My down the street neighbor was Princess Leia, and on Halloween she would answer the door in her robe and her buns and give us full-size candy bars and a dub, a $20 bill in her log cabin. Like, this is normal to me. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's also normal to me. I was getting bused into the South Central areas of LA ever since I was small. The first time I got bused into South Central, I was in the 2nd grade. LA had this experiment, and they didn't care where you were from or nothing, because they're picking me up in the hills, not the richest area of Los Angeles, but definitely the most eclectic, the Hollywood Hills. Like, everybody, you know, all those people I just mentioned and way more. So we would get in a school bus, and I would have to leave at 4 in the morning, and we were going to damn near to Watts, to Van Ness, and that was in the 2nd grade. And then I started going later, after I got kicked out of Bancroft for fighting. And Bancroft is like a gully school. Like, if you're from LA, you know that this is like a turfy in East Hollywood school. And I got kicked out for fighting and hitting somebody in the head with a bottle and all kind of crazy shit like that. And yeah, I'm a nice girl. My parents are, you know, these jazz players, and they run in these circles or whatever. But I didn't really have parents, you know what I'm saying? Because they were so busy doing music and drugs that I kind of raised myself and raised my baby brother. And then I was out in the streets just trying to make it do whatever I could make it do. So when I left Bancroft, I went to LACES. And LACES at the time was on Pico and Rimpau, which is like the north side of South Central, but it is in basically what's central Los Angeles. So that was 7th or 8th grade. Just at LACES alone, I had musical theater with Leonardo DiCaprio, who was 2 years younger than me. He and I starred in a play together, the HMS Pinafore. We had to sing and everything. And I was like, he used to call me Mom. And when cholos would threaten him and want to beat him up, he would come running to me and be like, Mom, help me. Shaka Khan's daughter was there in my class. There were so many famous people, cut chemists. And then our dances were DJ'd by the LA Dream Team, like the nutrition time dance at the school. Then every other Friday, they took us to World on Wheels to roller skate for PE class, 2 hours roller skating at World on Wheels. And this is the time of everything. This is the time of like NWA and 1580 Day, and like hip hop was everything and more. And I'm literally like leaving the hills in the morning, and I can look down out of my school bus window and see Ice-T and Darlene in the drop top. And then get to school, and then it's our nutrition dance, and the LA Dream Team is like actually there physically DJing. And then I'm in choir, and there's like all kinds of just like famous people's children, and people who would become famous, like the Jazzy Fat Nasties went to LACES, a bunch of actors, Kai and Kadu Lennox. There were all kinds of like people who went on to do hip hop or to do acting or to write films, and a lot of people behind the scenes too that you wouldn't necessarily know their name, but they've been involved in all manner of like hip hop and music business and films and television and publications. And I don't know, LA is like a different animal. So there's that whole portion of my life. But then I get to the Bay when the middle of August 16th, 1992 was when I touched down in the Bay at San Francisco State University. And I was in the dorms, and I had 2 people that I met the first day. They were there from Pasadena. So I didn't know them, and Pasadena is not LA. It's kind of like Concord and West Oakland, but still we were like close enough that we were new there, and we were like, okay, I'm a clique. Y'all lived on the same floor. And then there was a woman from, well, at that time she was a young lady, but from North Richmond, and she was my right down the door dorm mate, and her name was Acacia, Casey we called her. And she and I went on to form a R&B group together. We used to sing and write songs. We never came out, but we worked with a lot of cats from like Cytoplasm, like the more underground East Bay, Oakland cats. We worked with them like doing songwriting and getting beats like from Jamal or TLE, Dre, who was my boyfriend at that time. And so we were like in that circle. Then she turned out to be Tajay's baby's mother of his first daughter, Jasiri. So Jasiri now is a rapper, a singer, a producer. She has a female hip hop collective that she formed. They have a zine, like they have a whole thing, and she's created this like whole culture and cult of personality. But if you really know about her, we call her Jaja in the family, but Jasiri Theory, she goes by Theory or Theory Bo. Like her music is dope. She got herself in the theater. I don't think her daddy been in this time recently, to be quite honest with you. Like she got herself on, but the lineage is like her blood is Tajay as her father, Casey as her mother. Although Casey never came out, she and I were like brilliant at songwriting and singing, and we had this amazing group and all this stuff. And she did choir and other things with singing, so it's in her blood. But then also, I'm the part that you don't see, because I'm like, that's my niece. I was around. I was around since before she was in the belly. Them meeting was running around me and my friend Stacy and Casey, all running around. We would deal with Domino and A Plus and Tajay and all the guys, all the fellas. We would hang out with them. Like I said, we had class. We used to have class at A Plus's house back in the day. And so there was like this whole circle of people. So them even meeting and her coming to fruition, and she's grown now. She's past college age. She's a teacher. Like, she did really well in college. And even though I physically never got to have any children, it's in her DNA. You know what I'm saying? Because just of the group that I was in with her mom and all the works that I've done with her father over the decades and decades. And my little behind the scenes involvement with Hyro. And I do want to clarify something for people out there who do affiliate me with hieroglyphics. It's like, those are my friends and my family, like my brothers and my blood. Like, I feel like I'm like inextricably linked with all of them, and I'm moving along. But I've never worked for Hyro ever in my life. I've only helped them and assisted them and did everything I could to, for the different individual members and the group members. I've only ever actually worked for Tajay, for Clear Label, his distribution and his label. But I think a lot of people just associate me so much.
Straight up, that's I do. Yeah, that's kind of that's the way, like straight up. I'm like Hyro, straight up. Yeah.
And I want people to know that you should affiliate me with Hyro, because I've been down with them since 94, the very beginning of 94, and have rocked with them religiously ever since then, no matter where I've been, no matter what city I've been in, what industry I've been in. When I was at the Source magazine, I had to stand up in a meeting and cuss people out and fight, I damn near turn over tables. But when I walked out of that meeting, they said, okay, you can have a half a page for hieroglyphics for the next issue. Now, to me, that was ass backwards. They're putting, excuse my language, but bitches like Ashanti on the cover of the Source, the hip hop Bible, and I'm fighting to try to get actual hip hop in the issue. But me standing there in New York telling them, like, look, you can't be doing this, calling this hip hop and all this shit if you're not ever going to put any real hip hop in the magazine. And that's why I'm here. I'm not here to collect this tiny check that y'all are offering. I'm not here for all this drama with the Benzino and the Source and the sex harassment and all this and that. I'm not here for the fame. I'm not here for people to say, oh, you work for the Source, da, 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 da. No, I was there because I was able to put hieroglyphics back in there, which they should have been always included in the Source magazine, obviously, from when they were major to indie to up until now, and independent people like Immortal Technique, the first time he was ever in the Source, that was me. C. Ray's Walls, from when he was on Def Jux, couldn't get no play in the Source, not even a tiny sentence. I had to fight to get him in there. Anything you saw that was Rocksteady Crew, Zulu Nation, anything to do with actual hip hop, culture, the music, graffiti. Well, Chino BY, I was the graffiti editor, but I was in the meetings all the time because I was on staff, and I was fighting tooth and nail to make sure there was just a tiny actual bit of hip hop in the Source. Just a tiny bit, not a lot. You know what I'm saying?
And you say around like 94, 95, is that what you're saying?
Oh, when was I at the Source? Oh man.
No, I'm just saying, like, the time you're talking about now. What years was this? You said like around 95, 6.
Well, I'm saying early when I was mentioning a year, that's when I started knowing everybody from Hyro. That was in 94, because I came in 92. I moved to the East Bay around 93, and then 94. By the beginning of 94, we were hanging out a lot, and then also, like I said, having class at A Plus's pad. And the class part, remind me when I finish this next thought, is because I have to bring that back. That's such an important thing to talk about in this podcast. The class part was where the KMD demo, the unreleased, the album that nobody had, we had it in school. I call it school. It was, just us sitting around at Adam's house, but with books and records and building and talking, and it would be a variety of different people in and out, and you would never really know who was going to come to class, but we had that bootleg, we had that KMG record. And so I have a different a different KMD experience than a lot of people, and the Bay has it, and Oakland has it, because this small group of people had the record, and we were very careful to not make copies of it and not let it float around, and we weren't trying to do that. We had it, so we listened to it and we labbed it and we discussed it, and it was in our brain so many years before it was in anyone else's, because they hadn't heard it, because it never came out until much later. So that's it. All of this is Bay roots. All of this, I say that to say this. Everything that I'm talking about, I want people to know the impact that Oakland has, the impact that hieroglyphics has, the impact. I mentioned cytoplasm. When's the last time you heard somebody say cytoplasm in an interview?
Right. That's real. That's real.
Right. But you can't talk about the Bay knowledgeably. And I'm a transplant. I got there in 92. But I know Takim and Iquan, Seven Nas, they're the best 5% of their MCs that ever existed. I love Wu-Tang. I like a lot of different, I've listened to all the 5% rappers, I think. I've worked with most of them and managed a lot of them and run a lot of their labels, and a lot of them are dope. The new ones are dope. Raz Fresco and Essie Knack and all these, new cats that are coming up. The older ones are dope. Born Allah, who's one of the original ones. He's one of the first born of Love Allah, Los Angeles. He's a dope MC, dope rapper, and he's had a lot of different personas and kept coming back and putting out music. But I've heard 5% Nation of Gods and Earths, MCs and rappers from New York to LA and everywhere in between. And it's nobody getting with Takim and Iquan when they were doing their thing, when they were making their records. Seven Oz is one of the best hip hop groups that you don't know them. You haven't heard them. But we have, and we know. You know what I'm saying? And Iquan is still active. I run into him at the lake, and he still teaches.
I see him all the time.
Takim's around, and they're still around. And I'll bet you, if you walk them into the studio and put on a beat, they probably make the best record of 2021.
Yeah.
Takim and Iquan, if you want to get back down with the the music industry and and all of that. But people don't know. People think, oh, it's New York that runs the music industry. Oh, it's LA that runs the music industry. And to be quite honest, it's not. It's the Bay Area. It's Oakland in particular. And also, I mean, we can talk for a few minutes about San Francisco too, because the whole thing with Paco, with Trunks. I was at Hyde Street. I had only been here a few years. I was at Hyde Street, and I was with these two cats. Their names were Drazio and Kenyatta, and I don't even remember what rap group they were, but they were like, they had Caribbean backgrounds, and one was light, tall.
The Dark Side. The Dark Side.
There you go.
They were from the. Yeah,
there you go. So I was in the studio at Hyde Street, and I heard this rapping, and
Rough Edge.
You're right.
That was
Rough Edge, Drazio and Kenyatta. So I'm at Hyde Street with them, and I had just gotten to know them. It was my first time going to the studio in the Bay Area ever, and my first time with them. So
Hyde Street, just to give a little background, a little context, Hyde Street is like a real it's a renowned studio in San Francisco. So they recorded like Digital Underground, Too Short, Hyro. I mean, you could go crazy, you know what I mean? But they were, one of those official studios in the Bay. And there's a lot of official studios that were located in the Bay. So go ahead.
And Matt Kelly was the engineer. He's also the Hyro engineer, and just an incredible engineer. Big up Matt Kelly. If nobody ever spends a minute saying how incredible the work is, like that man's work is amazing.
I've been with him too. He's one of the first cats I want to do, like, put on the podcast, because nobody really hollered at him about things like that. So
the history of Matt Kelly, like, he's recorded George Clinton, and like, oh my God, it just you can't even imagine. So I'm in the studio with Rough Edge, and they're like practicing, getting ready to record. Matt Kelly, they're setting it up. And I hear out of the side of my ear, and you're not supposed to be able to hear between studios, but it's very faint. And I hear this kid rapping his motherfucking ass off, like just rapping, going crazy. And I was like, excuse me. Because at that time, I was sitting there, I was writing raps. Nobody knows this. I've never talked about this. So I was writing, and they were getting ready, and I hear this kid, and I was like, yo. So I was like, I'll be back. I pretended like I was going to the restroom or something. I walk and I go put my ear to the studio. It's Trunks. It's Paco. He's 13. It's his first time in the studio. Ooh. And I just hear him going off. And I'm just like, yo, what is this? Bananas. Who is this child? And I'm like, I can't really see him, and I just am like listening. And he was 13, so I can't even imagine. I was probably 19 years old, and I'm 46 now. So we're talking back in the day. We're talking
back in the back, yeah.
I find out later it's his first time in the recording studio.
Wow, it's crazy. Mm-hmm.
Right. So I even remember some of the bars. I remember, and I never heard the song again. I don't think it ever came out. He was just spitting. And now this lyric would get you canceled because they would say it's homophobic or whatever. But he said, everybody knows me like I'm Norm from Cheers. I get you open like butt cracks on queers. And I was like, yo, that was just one little tiny little couplet that I caught coming through the door. And I was like, yo. And at that time, I wasn't even in the music industry, quote unquote, except that I was born into it. I had done street team in LA. I had done, little lightweight things here and there. But my father tried to always keep me out of the music industry. And I have other people in my family, like, I don't even talk about this stuff because I think people have this perception of me because this should be the case. I think they think, well, Waleja's a millionaire. I should be. But the thing about it is, very rarely has anyone ever paid me. And it's not like people have shysted me and not paid what they owed. It's that going into it, I just do it. And then it gets sorted out later that like maybe I'll get like 1/10 of what a man would have gotten paid for the same thing. Or I'll get nothing and I might get a private thank you. But also very rarely have I ever gotten the shout outs and the credits or the, anything like that, or anyone in the interview saying like, well, actually, it was this woman who did that. Actually, it was this woman who did that. Because if everyone had just done that, then, or if Stone Throw had given me credit for the A&R work that I did on Mad Villain, forget about the cash, forget about my voice being on there, forget about me introducing Doom and Liv, forget about me actually doing the artist and repertoire on the album, which is what A&R is, which is why, it shouldn't have been a thing. But what it was that they didn't want to give a woman an A&R credit. Like they physically couldn't bring themselves to do it. They physically couldn't bring themselves to do it. They were like, well, we'll call you a project coordinator and we'll lightweight give you this like little credit. I never forget what Egon said in the message. He said, well, A&R credits here at Stone's Throw are as rare as hen's teeth. Like chicken don't have teeth, basically, right? And my thing was like, okay, that's cool. But now I did the A&R. I did it with Madlib and with Doom. The three of us really did it. It really wasn't much Peanut Butter Wolf to be involved. I never played no beats for him. He wasn't around. I mean, he's label and he whatever. But he wasn't part of the A&R experience on that project. It was me and Doom and Liv, and that's it. And everybody else over there who's like, oh no, this, that, blah, 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 blah. Like, first of all, I've had entertainment attorneys like salivating at the mouth, like, oh, can you please let us sue them for you, please? And I'm like, nah, I'm not suing those fools. Like, I'm cool. I haven't even registered my BMI for that shit. And I'm so like, it's so back in the whatever the fuck. But it is the thing where people are like, my name is on it. It does say Project Coordinator Miranda Jane. And on the original version, because I'm on the song Fancy Clown, but what I've come to find out is when my voice was used by Doom, I was always called Allah's Reflection. I'm the voice on MF Grimm's album, The Downfall of Iblis. The woman reading the Quran, which is very untraditional, very unheard of. We did that in my loft in Williamsburg, where Doom used to come and record and mix and engineer and master and do all his crazy villainous things. That was at my pad. And so Allah's Reflection, I did appear on Fancy Clown, and on the original version, the song was real dope. You could hear my voice, and it was real fresh the way we did it. And it's a crazy story for the next installment of the podcast, how that song came to be between Atlanta and LA and Brooklyn, where I was at. But since then, these fools have taken my voice and turned it down. And then on the most recent versions, they took my voice off the album.
So they just phased it out. They just phased it out over the years. It just got lower.
The bitch off the record altogether. Fuck that bitch. But the song is so not good without that portion of it, because you know, I think this is Doom from KMD. He's on a Prince Paul level. It's just Sonic. It's just Sonic. It's Daylight. It's KMD. It's like a certain thing that they do where if they put a voice on there, whatever it is, if it's Prince Paul cracking a joke, or if it's a woman that they like the voice and they think that you should do this skit like this, or if it's a sample or whatever little thing it is, if you take that away for whatever reason, you can't clear a sample, or you're denigrating the music. You done fucked it up. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless, you don't have to like me. You don't have to like my voice. But guess what, honey? Everyone loves my voice. So my thing is like, you denigrated the music. You ruined this song and you fucked up this album. Why? To spite me? Do you think like I said, I never went anything to a lawyer. I've never even gone into BMI and registered my own works. Never. And I probably do have some tiny little piece of money off of that record, because I mean, if you think about it, that shit has sold a lot of damn records, a lot. Especially independent wise, I would say a lot of people might put that as the #1 ever independent hip hop album of all time. I've seen it on charts a lot that way. Or you have people who are like fans of other genres of music and they come into hip hop, like they slide in through there.
Matt has a cult following. You know what I mean? Matt Villain has a cult easily. You know, like it always gets revisited every, it gets reverse engineered. Like, where did the samples come? You know, like, it's one of those albums that just kind of consistently always stays on the radar, and it keeps bringing in new, you have 20-year-olds that are like, Mad Villain, we got, so it's like, so you definitely, I mean, keep it real. Like, I remember being in Vallejo, just pushing the stroller, had my daughter, and I just bought it because of the album cover, because I had no clue what it was. I looked at it and was like, what is this? Picked it up, and I seen Stone's Throw, and I seen Madlib, which at that point I wasn't even really a fan of him. You know what I mean? I just was like, oh, he's cool. I wasn't like, I was like, oh, Madlib, okay, I know him. You know what I mean? But it was really just, I was just strolling. I was like, oh, I'll buy it. I had no clue what it was. Bought it and just like, this shit is out of control. I'm like, oh, one of those. I like you, and it's like one of those moments when you're like, you don't even know you're stumbling into something that you're gonna be listening to for
forever.
Like, that's why I remember the day like perfectly. I remember the time. I remember where I was just like, oh, and that's just like, whoa. It's so. If nothing, I can't offer the whatever, but just to extend that to let you know, you're in the DNA of a project that just affected the hip hop culture in a way that just like it, it's like an Illmatic damn near, straight up, keep it real. You know what I mean? So
thank you, and I agree. And a lot of people say, well, she didn't really help with it, or her involvement with it isn't important, or they might say, well, he had done collaboration albums before, so Mad Villain isn't innovative because there was Danger Doom or whatever. And I've heard all these things and more. I've heard all sorts of crazy conspiracy theories about it. But my thing about it is, I came across a quotation from Tom York from Radiohead, and he said it's his favorite album of all time. And I said, well, thank you, Tom York, because I feel that's a personal compliment toward me, because I know what I did. You know what I'm saying? And I know I was there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, then I find out far after I found that quote, I want to say it was Rolling Stone. So far after I find out that quote, I discover Tom York and Doom worked together directly. After that, if you search and you Google, you'll find a remix or some kind of record or something.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this is the thing that I want everyone to know when it comes to Doom and Grimm and my involvement with the different careers and Monster Island Czars and all that shit. I will be friends with them whether we talk or not forever. The love between us all is there forever. There's a lot of fragmentation. There's a lot of issues concerning money and people not getting paid and a host of things. And I would let Grimm speak to, and Grimm would love to come on, by the way. I would let Grimm speak to the Grimm part, and I would let the Czar speak to the Czar part. But as far as with Doom, I know his son, and I know his family, and I know his mother and his brother, and I know the people that he was in the Ansar community with. And I'm like a part of not just the music part, but the family part and the legacy part. And this is one of the reasons why I've never been angry at Doom personally. I've never felt like, because some people were like, oh, well, you should get a lawyer and you should go after this person and that person. I'm like, I'm good. I'm super cool. Because when I found out that he had gone on to work with Tom York and do something with Radiohead. When I found out that he had gone on to do Project, when I found out that he had collaborated with Nike, those are three huge things that I just said. He and I working together with the help from a few other people that were around the cypher, but really he and I as the mastermind and me being the secret manager behind the scene. Because for the most part, he would speak for himself in terms of management. And then he and I would have a side conversation, or sometimes it would be a good cop, bad cop thing. And he would say, okay, I want you to, this time you're going to be the face and you're going to talk to them because I don't want to talk to these people. Whatever it was, it depended on his mood, really. And if you spell doom backwards, what do you get? You get mood. And that's what runs his whole entire lifestyle and musical style and culture and everything. So depending on the day, depending on the mood, it was whatever he felt for that day, and it could change at a rapid rate. But he and I planted the seeds for all of those things. Even the work with Ghostface Killah. I remember I went to go interview one of Ghost's proteges on Staten Island. And mind you, like I said, I'm an LA girl. I lived in New York for a while, but I've never been in no Staten Island on no ferry boat. So I go, and, you know, Doom had gone back to Georgia at that time, but he had left some, we had talked about doing, I was like, you should work with Method Man and you should work with Ghostface. I said, I don't know how, you know, how well it would correlate with some of the other Wu members or whatever, but I can hear Ghost's voice with your beats, and I can see how this would be a thing. So then after he was like, he made some beats and he wrote Ghost on a CD, and there was like a little, he's a great graffiti artist. Me and him used to do a lot of graffiti together. That was a big part of it too, with Lord Scotch, the man who created The Mask and did the Doomsday album cover. You know, they would go do graph together, and we had a big piece running on my roof for a long time, and he and I would go paint sometimes. And, you know, we were all doing like real B-boy and B-girl shit together. It wasn't like we were all music businessy and like, we got to make this track now. Never like that. It was just the culture and the lifestyle. So Doom, he's just a different type of entity. Like he's not, it's like any musical genius, you know. You can't put a price on things. You can't put a time limit on things. You can't say, okay, you have to make 5 beats today and then tomorrow you have to make 5 raps. It doesn't work like that. And so we had a lot of things like with creativity and with business. And he's one of the few people, he and I and DJ Muggs from Cypress Hill, who I've also worked for and with, are the only people that I really know, maybe some of the cast from Hyro Lightweight, Tajay probably Lightweight, who can like be on a total creative like bender, but then stop and be like, okay, we have to have this meeting, we have to negotiate this. It's like you turn off this side of your brain, and then you're like, especially, yo, that brings me to, I'll just say real quick about Muggs, yo. When I worked at the office, I would come in, I would cook, I would clean, I would get things situated. They would be having their meetings. He would be ready to either do like record label work or go into the studio that he had in a back house. But I had never seen anyone flip. Like he would literally smoke a whole zone to the face during the meeting while we were all talking. And then he would like, you know, have like some crazy creative notion and idea that he would like say to everyone. And then he would turn around and be like, I noticed that the FedEx bill had this and that, and my accountant this, and can you check on that? And he would have like a whole list. You would think he was Bill Gates or somebody, like the way that he would run this list down. But mind you, like I said, he had just smoked more trees than I could smoke in a month, and had the crazy creative thought. And then he would be like, all right. And then he would disappear. And then you would go an hour or two later out to the studio part, and he would be in there with his cap on his head, because he always wears a cap on his head when he's creating, maybe a hood, like head down. He's like a monk. And when he gets in the studio, you know, like, don't bother him. Don't, like, I was so careful. I would try to like clean around, pick up the ashtray to try not to make a mess, and don't bring food into the studio. Don't talk in the studio. Like, be super careful. But, you know, like, I just had this, like, this feeling around him, like, do not ever fuck up the creative part. Don't say anything. Be quiet. Stand behind. Sit in the back. If there's rappers in there, the rappers might be chopping it, but you have to allow that because they're getting creative. They're maybe smoking, drinking, they're chopping it up. They're getting their lyrics together. So that's allowed. But the office lady / intern / cook and cleaner and whatever I was an intern and general manager at the same damn time, which is what I've done for Tajay and Clear Label. It's what I've done for Angelus, which was Chase, Muggs, and DJ Khalil. Now, come on, a label owned by DJ Muggs, Chase Infinite, who's also Aaron Johnson, a famous music business executive, without even rapping. And DJ Khalil, the producer, like of the three of them owning the label. And then the first record was Jizza and Muggs, and so I'm going there like as an intern, literally. And then I end up doing everything from cleaning the toilet and making sure people's white t-shirts are creased to, like having the meetings that the distributor would chase or whatever, like top tier thing and everything in between. And, my thing is always the food. And I think that's like when you think of the Doom stuff, food, that was a concept that was conceptualized in my loft, which was like a studio / office / apartment / kitchen. It was like a whole big ass thing in Williamsburg. And he was like, well, what if I could do an album where you can't just buy it with money? You have to also donate canned goods to get food, because I want to feed people and I want to help people and I want to do more than just, sell a hip hop. He was like, do you think that's something that could be done? And I was like, yeah, why not? And at that time, I had discovered the first ever recorded African-American recipe, which is for hoe cakes. And I had discovered that that's the first ever recipe that got written down in what's known as America. It was hoe cakes, which the women would make. They would cook it on the hoe. After work was done, they would wash the hoe. They would make the cornbread type of batter. And then they would heat the hoe in the fire and then pour it with like a little grease and then pour that batter onto the actual hoe that they had used in the field. And they cooked it and it was called a hoe cake. Come on now. So we're at the house and I'm discovering the hoe cake recipe, and he's like, we want to call this food and we want to have the canned good donation and all the and then the cover has him eating the cereal and it has the cookies and then all the titles of it is like con carne, and all the titles of it are food related and then there's like a lot of like hoe cakes references and stuff, and I don't know, like it's that weird creative thing where all these things come together. But for me, always the most important part is the food. Always. I know what everybody I've ever worked with, and some people I've only met a few times, I know exactly what they eat and what they don't eat. I know it by their culture. You and I have been out to eat. You've eaten food out of my home before. You know how it is. So that's me. Like if we're having a meeting, I'm not going to just come out of my house empty-handed. If I've made smoothies and tea and I have breakfast sandwich or whatever, I'm gonna bring it into the meeting with you, because that's it. Like that's what I do. If you don't come to my rest, I go to yours or I go to your studio. I mean, come on. Like I used to cater when Equipto and Board Stiff had the little studio close on the backside of Hyde Street, with that little gate that you had to go in, and the studio was mad small. The Solidarity recording studio that they had not too long ago in the Skull. You know that studio. You've been there before, right?
No, never been there. Never been there.
Okay, it's a tiny little, it's like on the back side of Hyde Street, like on the alley side. And it was really small studios. They were cut up into tiny little pieces. And Solidarity had a lab there. And when I say tiny, I mean, I've been in that room you're in now. It's smaller than that room. It had a little tiny bathroom, which was just a toilet and a sink. And it had a little small loft, and they used to store like merch and stuff there. And then there was a little couch, some records, and the studio part on the other side, like right up against the back wall of Hyde Street. Like they're not connected, but they were like that on each other. So first of all, no kitchen, no microwave. No, it might have had a microwave. It did. No, it had no hot pot. It had no burner. It had no kitchen sink. It had no counter space. It didn't even have enough room for a recording studio or a gathering place or a place to store your merch, much less anything with food. So as soon as I got over there, as soon as I started getting down, and I had known of Board Stiff, but I didn't really know E that well at the time. I was just meeting him and getting to know him. But then, of course, he has that long-standing relationship with True Justice, and I've known True since I was a kid, like in my 19 or 20s. And so I felt real comfortable over there, and Agent Strychnine was over there, and, everybody from Solid and Solidarity and Board Stiff. And for those, if people don't know those names, it's kind of sad that you don't, because they should be just as lauded and just as known as hieroglyphics. They are kind of the hieroglyphics, but of San Francisco. San Francisco is a whole other animal. It's a whole nother story. But that's where
I think they're working on a documentary, aren't they? Or
Drag One Resda is working on
That's
it.
right.
Yeah. Right. And that's going to be dope, and that's going to shed a lot of light that people should know. But if you're watching this and you know every other name that I've said, but you don't know the name Board Stiff, or you don't know the name Equipto or White Mike, or just Google those and listen to the music, because especially if you go way back to the late 80s and early 90s, it doesn't really make a lot of sense as to why they didn't get as huge as they could have or should have gotten. There's no way to explain it except that San Francisco is like an amalgamation of a bunch of different little cities and towns, whereas the town is like West Oakland and East Oakland shouldn't be no different. It's just politics and turfology and shit that keeps people beefing between East and West Oakland. Really,
it's the same. Yes, but generally, yeah, generally.
San Francisco is a little
worlds, different worlds.
Totally different worlds. And so you have the Hunters Point cast like RBL Posse, and there's a lot of unknown cast from HP and Double Rock and all those areas. And then you might go over to Lakeview and Cougnut, rest in peace, or you know what I'm saying. And I actually have street ties in Lakeview, and a lot of people don't know that. I don't really talk about it a lot, but I spent some years in the turf in the streets in Lakeview, because when I first got here, I met a man there, K-Swiss is his name, and I was his girlfriend or whatever. And then also I took over his dope business when he went to the penitentiary for some years, and so I was in the trenches in Lakeview. So I have like a special affinity. At that time, Cougnut was out in the streets, he was still living, and the Lakeview, something was in the water, because they had like UNLV. Do you remember UNLV? They had, I think, one album. If you go back and Google it, they were from Lakeview. You had Cougnut. You had like all these little scenes. And then Fillmore, like I used to work in Fillmore when I first moved to San Francisco, but come on, like JT the Bigger Figure and San Quinn and members of Fort Stiff, and like every little tiny neighborhood from San Francisco. And San Francisco's tiny. If you've ever come from a big city and go to San Francisco, it's small. It's not small. But each neighborhood has like these superstars of rap and hip hop. And some of the more street oriented ones did kind of get, like, people know the name Rappin' Forte, especially when Drake.
Of course, yeah.
Drake by still get known around the world once people figure it out. There are certain cats from San Francisco who did kind of make a splash and make a name, but there were so many. This is in like the early 90s. There were so many talents coming out of San Francisco, you couldn't keep track of it. Like I said, I was randomly at the studio, and then this 13-year-old kid, Chance, is in the studio next to me, rapping better than any grown man I've ever heard rap in my life. He was a 13-year-old, first time ever on a microphone, and I just happened to be there. This is my life. I know it's crazy, and none of it is to brag or boast, because to be honest, this is the first video interview I've ever done in my life, and I'm 33 years in the music business.
Oh my God.
I've done the occasional audio interview. I've done the occasional type it out interview. There's a few things. If you Google the name Miranda Jane, you'll find some stuff, and you'll find my clips. And it's the Source magazine. I worked there. 4080 Hip Hop magazine. I worked there. Stress, New York Illest Mag. I was the first and the only ever West Coast editor. And then Stress unfortunately went out of business. But the whole team from Stress, we went over and we started Complex magazine. Mark Echo may have paid for it. He may have hired Ket, who was the owner of Stress, and V, who was like a kind of the general manager and managing editor of Stress. But they moved me out from Cali to come to Complex, and we built that magazine. And when it first started, it was dope as fuck. It was a video magazine. It used to hang from the Echo clothing. It was a little CD-ROM. We hired all our friends and family, and we made the dopest hip hop magazine. We traveled around the world. They filmed B-boys and B-girls. I had Mystic in there. I had Planet Asia in there. I had all the real shit in there. It was dope. And they turned it into a monstrosity and a bastardization, made it into a men's magazine. I knew it was all bad. Though, because one day they were like, we're doing this fashion layout. It's going to be bitches with dogs. And so it's going to be like scantily clad women with dogs on chains. And then we'll flip it and we'll have them on a leash. And there's going to be like, and I was like, in my mind, the whole time I was like, okay, so I'm going to be here like maybe 4 or 5 more hours. I'm going to grab my laptop, and then I'm never coming back in this motherfucker for any reason. And that's what I did. I left a job that had moved me to New York. It was a salary that I could not comfortably live on, but with my additional hustles, I was kind of able to survive in New York on that teeny bitty salary that they gave me. But I've always used my principles and my morals and my compass and my intuition to know when it's all bad and it's time to go, because hip hop is my culture. This was something I'm born and raised into. My cousins were MCs and DJs and B-boys, and they're famous graffiti artists in LA, and they were dope at breakdancing and rhyming. And I grew up the little girl with all my four older boy cousins. I would watch them paint crap. I would watch them bring their linoleum out to the front and put the boombox out and break and rap. And I was a little girl, and I wanted to be down. I wanted to paint graffiti. I wanted to rap. I wanted to dance. And they were always like, no, you can't do that. You're a girl. Step back. Step back. So first I had my father telling me, no, girls can't do this. They can't do that. Then I had my older boy cousins like, nah, you can't do that. You can't just stand back and watch. That went on my whole entire life. So once I found a way to be a woman in hip hop and in music, and sorry, I'm emotional. This is like my life. So I found the way in the back door. Like I could go work in the office. I was smart. I knew business. I've been hearing my daddy chop game about the music business since I was a 0-year-old. When I was in my mama belly, they were doing music business and the business of music and the creation of music. So it was something that I always could do. And then I learned, okay, well, the studio and the record label is always a filthy mess. So if you clean all the ashtrays and clean the kitchen and straighten everything and empty the trash and take the guts from in front of the SP 1200 and dust up under the Techniques and make sure the records go back there, put the records back there and put this there. And like once I got an affinity for that, I was like, okay, I'll just be back here in the corner. I'll watch, I'll clean a toilet, I'll be in a kitchen, I'll wash all the sink full of dishes, 4 weeks old, covered with mold, with the sign there that always says in the studio, what does the sign always say, wash your own dishes. There's no housekeeper here. Your mama don't run the studio. There's always a sign. There's always a sign, and the sign always says you must wash your dishes. And guess what? Not a goddamn motherfucker in the history of hip hop has ever washed a goddamn dish. And if I ever worked there, whether it was the tiniest studio or the biggest one with the SSL board and the whole Nina, even now when I'm more prominent and I'm known and people are like, oh, she's done this and that, and she's a millionaire, which I'm not. I'm not even a thousandaire at the moment. It's almost the first. I'm not even a thousandaire right now, but I'm working towards getting there by the 5th. So even then, famous, rich, while everybody knows Walesia, what do? I walk in the studio, I set up the talent. I brought Tajay to a Be Real TV not that long ago. Be Real in the front. I passed Be Real an ounce of free weed on the way. I bring Tajay to DJ. I get him set up to do his interview and do his talk and do his thing. And then I go and I set the bags down and make sure everything's situated for like the social media, making sure Tajay is going to be known that he's on Be Real TV and on Heavyweights Radio. Make sure all the Instagrams and everything is all going to be kicking while it happens. And then always it's me. What do? And we drove down in traffic in a rainstorm to get there, like from the town. We mashed to get there on time. So, but I did have the time and the forethought to make tamales and have a big ass bag full of food. So while they're doing what they're doing, I heat up the food, and I'm in a tiny, Be Real TV has maybe a microwave and a fridge you're not supposed to open and maybe a couple knives. So I put together this whole hookup of all this food. I have teas, I have smoothies, I have drinks. And I do all that, lay it out, and I can see dudes looking from the office like, why is she in the kitchen? Who is she? What is she doing? What's going on? And so then I see them kind of looking a little bit. I was like, okay, cool. So I have all the food laid out ready for them to be done and them to eat. I was like, all right, I'll clean your kitchen. So then I cleaned the whole kitchen, you know what I'm saying? Straighten it up like it's never been straight before. Made sure all the edges were all nicely bleached and clean, perfectly. Straightened up the refrigerator. And by the time all that's done, I'm back in the green room sitting with my computers doing my work, and when Tajay and them come back, they have no clue that I done did all that. All they know is there's food hot and ready, and you know what I'm saying, and the internet part of it is done, the promotion is done, the radio show went swiftly, everything was perfection, you know what I'm saying, and that's the secret that until now nobody probably would know. That like, okay, yeah, I worked at Angelus Records and I did, take meetings at distributorships and manufacturers with Chase, all the way down to like running the MySpace back in those days, MySpace. And I did all that, and those were the things some people may or may not know me for. But also, I was the one scrubbing that toilet in there. If there was a dirty laundry piling up, it's a gang of cholos in and out of this studio and this record label and establishment all the time. It's got to be clean white t-shirts. It's got to be clean white wife beaters. It's got to be clean socks. It's got to be clean Dickies, shorts and pants. You know the routine, the get down. Yeah. So if I would be in there and I would see that the laundry had piled up, they would all be doing what they was doing, not tripping off me. I would walk to a laundromat with my own money, mind you. I would walk to the grocery store and use my little money that I had in my purse. so that I could come back, cook a big ass meal. So when everybody was done, they would come and the food would be there and be ready and be hot and be fresh for them. And somehow, miraculously and mysteriously, also, all that fucking laundry is somehow done and and ready for people to be clean and white and crispy again. And I've never said a lot of these things out loud, but those are the, as a woman, I care about that more than I care about the big record deals, the mad villains, the how much money people think I have, the what genre do people know me from? Oh, she was a magazine editor. She did this at record labels. She whatever. All that is good and well. And people are going to always talk. Some people are going to hate. Some people are going to congratulate. Some people are going to pay. Some people are going to lay. But all that, in my heart, what I care about is like, I've seen the video, Jizza and Muggs, and I remember, I steamed all of Jizza's velour suits and made sure there wasn't any bit of a wrinkle. Or I also got the product placement from Adidas. I got those suits. You know what I'm saying? I helped put the video together. I helped Chase produce it. We cast it. We had Dilated Peoples. I had B-Boys, Donnie, Crumbs. We had, everybody of anybody of LA hip hop was in that video. It's called General Principles. It's the black and white video with the chest, and they have the
chessboard.
Yeah, one of the dopest videos I think ever. And all I was doing was helping Chase. Like they didn't say you're gonna PA this day, or you're gonna do product placement or styling, or you're gonna steam Jizz's suit and then run and go get him a salad sandwich for him and Dreddy Kruger and bring it back. That's not ever in the job description. And I think maybe because I've worked for damn near every label and damn near every crew, maybe some people kind of might take it for granted, but people I haven't worked for, they're always like more interested in the food. Like people will like my posts they'll like my posts about music. They'll like a video I post. They'll like a selfie maybe. But most of the time they're like, what did she cook? What is that? How do I get this food? Like what? Mostly it's the food, and that's the secret. The secret is mostly the food.
That's great. So with all that said, you've worked in the magazines, you worked in the industry. Are you leaning toward one side more than the other? Is it just like, is you're kind of open to adapt to whatever situation, or do you have one that you kind of dig more than the other?
I mean, I'm going towards my 50s. And like I said, I don't have shit because I never got cashed out and I never got credited properly to where I could go to the next and get cashed out. Because if anyone had ever given me proper credit, if so-and-so had given me the A&R credit, I could have walked into any label 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later as an executive. You know what I'm saying? And they would have been like, oh, wow, it's the heavyweight female A&R. We're going to give her the office. We're going to give her the credit cards. We're going to give her all the clout and all the power and everything she needs to get the job done, even though she has ovaries. But my ovaries prevented me from getting that A&R credit in the first place from the indie, from the underground, from the backpackers. So I don't have the money, I don't have the cash, and I don't have the credit. I have certain things I have the credit, like magazines, my name weighs a ton as far as like Miranda Jane, but I've never written for a magazine as Walasia. They block me out. I reach editors all the time, and they tell me, oh, well, you could pitch something. And I'm like, and I don't want to be an asshole. I think I'm very humble, and I mostly don't talk about myself. I mostly talk about my artists and my labels and my projects. And I mostly big up everyone who's actually doing the creation. But writing and journalism is a creation, and it's very important. It's not an element of hip hop, but it's something that, come on, without the Source and 4080 and Stress and even Complex to an extent, without all those, where would the music be? Where would the culture be? Especially globally, in other countries, a lot of times they don't have access really to all the records like how we do. Nowadays more so, but back in the day, not really. So the magazines were really, really important, and they were an important way to spread the culture and spread the music. And when it comes to the name Miranda Jane, I mean, it rings bells. I have fans, like people, editors and journalists and people in high level positions at magazines and publications and blogs and online. like they were either they were fans of my writing or they were my sons, my daughters. Nowadays, a lot of people, I'm like, oh, you're my granddaughter. I'm like, yeah, I lightweight mentored this woman, and that's how you got in. And you're publishing books, and you're driving Mercedes Benzes, and you're getting, you have access to all the everything, and you don't even know. It's like a fragmented family history. You know what I'm saying? Where you don't know your folks on one side of the family. Everybody knows the male lineage. Everybody knows the Bones Malones and the Chris X's and the Jermaine Halls and the Carlito Rodriguez's and the Selwyn Hines and the Cheo Adari Cokers and on and on. I could name a million names. You know what I'm saying? The Rob Fields, the George Nelsons, everybody knows them. But when it comes to, and I, unlike these newfangled women who I think don't even realize or care that I kicked the fucking door open for them and risked my life doing it and didn't get paid for it, I big up Danielle Smith and Tracy McGregor and all the women who came before me doing it. T Love at Rap Pages. Like, I know the women who came before me, and I know what they did. And I know the women in my peer group, and I know the things that they did. Aaliyah King and Kim Osario, and there's a million writers that I could mention and editors that I could mention. If Danielle Smith, if I didn't already say Danielle Smith, she's from the Bay too. Like, I big them up because those is my moms. Like, they might not have known me personally, Dream Hampton. They might not have taught me, but I know their names and I big them up and I pay attention to the matriarchal lineage of the shit. But I was really one of the only women in my generation who did all the kinds of work that I did. Because, yeah, a lot of women wrote for hip hop magazines, for sure. A lot of them did. And some of them were kind of nice with the pen. But first of all, I write better than almost everybody. That's just a thing. I was a spelling bee champion in first grade, early on. Like, I was always really, really good with the pen. And I didn't go to school for this. I don't have a journalism degree. I didn't get to go to college. You know what I'm saying? I went to about a year's worth of college. And then that was it for me. I didn't really, I never went back to school after that. So all of this is self-taught. And while other women were writing and editing and maybe doing, a couple other different jobs, some of them, like Kim, was an editor-in-chief of The Source. And I big her up for that because she was the final word on whether or not I got to get hired at The Source. And she did hire me. Mind you, my former intern, was my boss, who took the job that was meant for me and got paid more, happened to be a man. And he's an excellent and amazing writer and editor, Fahim Ratcliffe. But he had previously been a mentee of mine and a lightweight intern of mine, and someone that I had assigned work to, who was now above and over me at The Source, running it. Because they said, they said, you know what they said, Am? They said, well, Kim's the editor-in-chief. She's a woman. So we can't make a woman the culture editor. So, no, we can't do that. I basically, all that to say that everything I've explained today and everything that I've told about her story, because I'm a woman, it's my story and it's her story, but also the history and my involvement in it from behind the scenes, I sacrificed my lifestyle. I never got to have children. I never had like the husband and the kids and the household and the support ever in my life, because I was always helping build the empire, and then I would go on to the next. If Hiro didn't need me, if Hiro was good and I couldn't assist, or I happened to move to another place, I would still do my lightweight long distance assistance, but I wouldn't be all the time like trying to help them or trying to find ways to fit them into the media or whatever it was. And then I might be at Angelus for a while. I might spend a year there, and I might be helping Chase and helping Khalil, I had worked with them previously many times before. That was my first time working with Muggs. I had cooked over there before, but I might be there for a while. And then when I felt they were rolling, they had the Just album out. They put out So Scientific. They put out Mitchie Slick. They didn't really need me anymore at that point. And so basically, it's like I'm a kind of like a person who's alive, but who's kind of like an angel. Because if you think about this, when your shit is going asunder, somehow I just magically pop up. Like I moved there, or somehow somebody hit me and was like, oh, did you know they had a new album? And I'll be like, no, I didn't. And if I don't know, nobody else knows. So let me run over there and try to, and I'm not saying anything is due to me. Like I'm the big thing and I should pop my collar. Being a woman, that's never the case. That's never the case. That's why I do so well at a company like that. That's why I do so well standing behind Tajai, because Tajai is a kingpin an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He has 10 successful businesses at a time and employs hundreds of people, and not just in music. And not, you know, he's like a Bill Gates, but so much better because he's self-made. He's Black, Blasian, whatever you know what I'm saying. His heritage comes from the Afro diaspora. He's African American. He's Oakland American. He's Bay bred, born, and built. You have to respect that. But in all those years, he did it alone. I didn't pop up until he had been had Clear Label, and he had obviously been had High Roll. But I came and I helped for about 10 years. I still help whenever the opportunity arises. Like, he has a record coming out with the Architect soon called Black Tech.
Black Tech.
Tech. And man, I'm not going to mention the features yet because I don't think they've been announced, but it's heavy.
I talked to him. He hit me over the head with a couple of them.
Yeah, and I can't wait to hear it. And recently, I've been having a lot of success working my artists to satellite radio and mix shows. So now I've taught myself radio promotion, and I've been doing radio promo. I don't think there's been too many women who have been successful at radio promo. If there have, I maybe can think of a couple, but they were at majors. I mean, you have Mona Lisa. Mona Lisa's like a me. She was with Loud. She was with every label you can ever think of. When Cedric Ceballos had his label, I don't even remember what that was called, but she had that. She's been a DJ. She's been a everything. Mona Lisa's iller than me. I mean, I give it up. I came up kind of watching her just be great, and she went through so many of the parallels of the things that I went through, and now she's a very well-renowned DJ. She finally got her DJ on. She finally got to do her creative thing after she helped every single man in the universe of hip-hop who ever had an office in LA or in New York, or whoever did. She was with Loud when it was not even a desk and a chair, when they had a box to put the computer on top of. Ooh. You would have Mona Lisa there putting in work. And Bigga B, Chase's cousin, rest in peace, who used to do Unity, he was there as an executive too. You know, that there are these few women, you don't know about us, you don't know our name, you don't know our story, you don't know the sacrifices that we've made, you don't know the tiny paychecks that we've gotten, and we're happy to get those tiny ones because usually we got nada. And also most of the time went in our pocketbook, in our purse, in our pocket to put some on it, whether it was putting money to get the trees, whether it was paying for the postage to ship the packages. The generosity of a woman's nature and the love and the caring and the support, like oh my God, I'll get really actually emotional on a damn video chat if I think about not just me, but her and so many other women behind the scenes. And when you talk about DNA, I'm talking about the DNA. You do get it from your mama. It was not a man here first, you know what I'm saying? But it's our role to be back there. And so I think some of us have wanted to jump into the forefront, but then we've been like, no, maybe we're not supposed to do that. But the same way she's doing her creativity now, and a lot of women like my sis Non-Lib, who's a famous graphic designer artist, she does.
I follow her on
created the creative direction and the branding for Griselda. A lot of people might not know it.
She's hard.
The reason you know of Griselda was because Non-Lib put the stamp on it and made the ill creative direction and graphics come alive. She's amazing.
I didn't know that.
She's amazing.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
She does the art, the graphic shit on the merch and all that. She's hard.
Yeah, she's done covers for so many. Rock Marciano, Husky Kid. She's worked with Planet Asia. She's worked with Madlib. She's worked with Griselda. She's just like an amazing and incredible artist. But so now she's kind of pivoted, and she graduated from the Beat Junkies Institute of Sound. She put herself through DJ school and production school with the Beat Junkies. And so now she's a DJ, and she's getting into, she's getting her craze, and she's getting all her things together. I'm sorry to stand up, but I have a painting that she did for me. This is called Mood. So it's the woman with the doom mask, and she's eating the cupcake. And you can get all this on nanlib.com. It's nanlib.com. She has t-shirts, posters. This is the original painting. You can't have mine because basically this woman is me. I'm this woman right here. But you can buy a print of it. You can get the art. You can, and that's just one small piece of her work. Yeah. So she's DJing now. And then I have two younger sisters that are down with this new thing that I just started called Lady Angels. I have a producer called Ren Sovereign, and she's on Twitter, SOVREN with an _. She's a producer, and I've been doing pro bono work, managing her and brokering for her. I've already gotten her placement on a very, very big record that's going to come out next year. She's got 2 tracks on there. And so her beats have gone from, she used to do like beat leases and, you know, the guys would pay her a few hundred or whatever. So she's already in the thousands off one deal. I just met her a week ago, never met her in person, just mentoring her and doing pro bono and all that. And there's another sister producer. Her name is Khadijah Haynes, and she's ill. She has a co-production credit actually with August Fanon. Have you heard the name? He's
No.
ill. Google it. It's like Frantz Fanon, the author, but it's August is his first name, Fanon. He's a dope producer. She has a co-production credit on a record that she did with him, and her name is Khadijah, and then her last name Haynes, Haynes, and then the number 1. So she's at Khadijah Haynes, the number 1. Nanlib is at NANLIB, and Ren is at SOVREN_. So these 3 women and me are an entity called Lady Angels. I'm helping them come up. I'm raising funds for them. They all need little equipment for their studios and this and that. I'm mentoring them in the business of music. We all kind of teach each other. We help each other out. I'm teaching them to get their publishing together, basically any and everything in the music industry that they need to know, and also getting them to that rate. Like when I met Khadijah about a week and a half ago, she didn't have a co-production credit. She had done some co-production and she was waiting to be credited. Now she has been credited, so she has that one officially on the books. And then that leads to me, and this is the first time I've ever popped my collar in my whole life. People think I talk a lot, and I'm physical. I'm not. Yeah. So I have a co-production. I have had one co-production in the past. It was with Doom, and it's on a Rodan record called "The Ruler of Day and Night," I believe. And it's a sample from Nights Over Egypt, the Jones Girls. And so I got the record, and I sat with Doom, and I told him where to chop it and how I wanted it and exactly the whole get down, and he made it with his hands, but I made it with my mind and with my sample. So that's kind of an unofficial, my first ever and only beat up until now was that. So now,
did you get that cleared? Did you get that cleared, by the way?
From he's never cleared anything. He's not a. Okay. That's the whole thing with Doom. Like, he was never a citizen of the United States, and he never had any legal entity or business or company here, and he never had a U.S. passport. And I don't think I don't know his tax business, but I don't think he had a tax ID number or a social because he's not born here. So he just kind of did whatever he felt like doing with Anita Baker or Sade or anybody else.
That was a dumb question. That wasn't.
I love him. I love him for it, to be quite honest with you, because I'm like, okay, so. Yeah, I don't know that he ever cleared anything. I mean, maybe
probably not.
Maybe in the Electra days, maybe that was one of the problems in the Electra days where maybe they couldn't clear things or didn't want to pay for it, or who knows? I don't even know. That's such a great question. Yeah. But it just kind of came out as like a loosely, and then he put it as an instrumental on one of those Special Herbs albums. So it is. You can find it online. If you search MF Doom and Rodan, Rodan, Rodan is a rapper. He was actually a member of KMD. Very few people know. From 88 to 89, Rodan was in KMD, and then he's one of the members of Monster Island Czars. To me, one of my top 5 dead or alive. Like, his emceeing is insane. So that song, you might find it by like R.O.Z.A.N, like Ruler of Day and Night, or you might just find his name. But when you hear the song, you hear the sample. Now people can know, even though I was uncredited, basically, you can know that, I mostly made that beat and he did it with his hand. So
you're saying now though, right now though, you get your first credit.
Right now I have finally my own actual co-production credit. So my artist, I shouldn't say my artist, but an artist with whom I run a business and a label. It's called the Mali Empire, MALI, like Mali Dogon. Famous.
I'm sending y'all something too. I'm sending you some. I've been seeing you putting a post.
About looking for,
I'm stacking some for y'all.
All right. So the label is Noah the Flood, and he and I kind of run the business, and we do like the distribution and the manufacturing and all the label and all the promo. Like I said, I've been doing radio promo. We do marketing, and then he raps and he, executive produces, and he's a dope ass MC. He has those albums with the Architect called Trill Life Mathematics and Trill Life Mathematics 2. And those are the ones that are infamous for Nas having stolen the cover art and Kanye having stolen the beat.
Damn,
oh, Lord.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we just gonna take the whole thing.
He's put out about 7 albums since those Trill Life records. And so the next one, whenever it comes out, probably sometime later this year or next year, I co-produced the beat with Fortes, who's a gold producer who's worked with Styles P and Jadakiss. So it's produced by Fortes, and Noor Science is the name I'm using as a producer, which was also the name of my record label. And that's Noor, which means light. That's my middle name, Waleja Noor Shabazz. So it's Noor Science.
All this, like, we'll get all this for the link. You know, we'll get all the, you know, all the things too that you type.
So the producer that I co-produced it with is Fortes, Fortes, and he's worked with Styles P and Jadakiss, and he's rapped himself and had some success doing that. But his works with Styles and with Kiss have sold a lot of records. He's a very well-known producer. And so he and I co-produce. We have a little production team. It's called Disposable Cadillacs, which is because I used back in the day in Oakland, I used to buy a Cadillac, or a boyfriend would buy me a Cadillac, and I would drive it for a while. And, you know, it would be the old school, the 74 Brougham. And when it stopped working, I would just leave it on the highway, call somebody to pick me up, and go through, back in the day, it was with the newspaper. You had to go, we didn't have Craigslist, we didn't have all the internet, so you go to the back of the newspaper, and I would find whatever nice used Cadillac that I wanted to floss in, and I would drive that one until it stopped working. And so sometimes I had two, sometimes I had three, but I had disposable Cadillacs in real life. And that's been the name of like a group or an entity that I always wanted to use for like an R&B group or something or other. So I just thought it would be perfect because he and I are really into what we call soldies, or like the oldies that mostly like cholos and cholas would listen to in the Bay and in LA, but like everything from like the 50s to like even into some of the funk stuff like One Way, and, you know, getting into the 80s, mainly 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he and I are both like musicologists who know thousands and thousands of 45s. And we know the names of groups you've never heard of. And I knew this already by myself, and he knew it already by himself. And we randomly came together on Twitter and started DMing each other and just sending each other loops and samples and rare 45s and all this stuff. And then we started just, you know, co-producing together and just working together. And sometimes we'll get on Twitch or different platforms and we'll just do, you know, little sessions. And I'm here in California, and here in New York. And, you know, the quarantine has been real good for this because you can be home and you can really get your creativity on. But I'm working 7 days a week. I'm sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night that's on a good night. That's a good chunk of sleep. Because all the other time I have to be working. I have these record labels. I have general management duties. I have promotion. Like I said, now I've been doing satellite and mixed show radio promo for different fools. And I'm working on R.A. the Rugged Man record right now. It's called All My Heroes Are Dead, and it came out on Nature Sound. And it's weird. It came out about 4 months ago. It kind of got slept on. And when I tell you, it's got Chuck D and Ice-T and Brand Nubian all featured on the record, and plus every name that you can imagine or think of. And it's R.A. the Rugged Man, who's crazy, bitter,
I heard
one of the nastiest. So I'm working that record like as a consultant. I'm actually I'm managing a gentleman. His name is Rosebud, and he was in the film American Pimp. He's an author and an educator and a former Mac and pimp and player, and it's Rosebud. Like, you know, the real Rosebud, the actual pimp. And I'm managing him now. So I'm doing some business management and general management for him. I'm helping him, you know, get some books released and just a variety of different, you know, business projects with him. And he's got a lot of products, and he's been in the game since the 60s, and he's been making books and other creations since the 80s. And so I just very recently started adminning some of his business stuff, and it's very new, but it's going very well. And, you know, I'm just, you know, trying to somehow manage all of these things and get all these things going. And you can imagine how hard it is for me to sleep, because not only do I have to do all of this for all the people that I manage, people that I work with, these women that I'm mentoring and teaching and educating and pro bono working for, then I'm here co-producing beats with Fortes. But what it's leading up to, Def Jeff is one of my mentors, and he's teaching me audio. So I have Zoom classes, private Zoom classes with OG Def Jeff from, you know, of all the fame, of all the production.
Oh, that's crazy.
And he's teaching me some different things right now, Serato Sample and a bunch of other stuff. And then once I have those mastered, I'm going to move on to, you know, I have some different equipment here that I've gotten just for myself before I even started this fundraising project that you might or might not have seen that I've been doing. And so I have like a SP404 and an MPC Studio and an Apogee Duet that Architect told me. And then I have Kazal, who's Mellow Man Ace's son, and he's one of the illest on the SP404. Like, he's up there with DiBiase, you know, as far as like programming and using it live and freaking it. And he's like kind of my tech support guy, like my go-to. So if I need to figure something out, because I'm an old ass woman, I'm 46 years old, and yeah, I've been around the studio and I've seen everybody do what they do, and am my whole life and career. Everybody I've been around, I've always asked them like, hey, when there's a little time left over, could you show me Pro Tools? Can I sit and watch you? Can I see what you do on Ableton Live? Can I learn how to use it? Back in the day, I bought Dell's SP1200 and gave it to my ex-boyfriend. He had a room in the back of our house with Dell's SP and an ADAT that I bought and speakers and a whole equipment, and he was just back there living, just making beats, just doing the do. I bought that SP. I never got to put my hand on that thing ever in my life. Did I touch it? You know what I'm saying? And so I'm trying to play catch up because I should have been doing all this shit in the 80s. I should have been doing all this shit when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. But like I said, and it's not the men's fault. I feel it. They were like, no, you stay in your place. And I feel that because as a woman, I do have a certain place. But I feel like I've done well in my role as a woman person because I have cooked everything for everybody. And I have cleaned all the shit for everybody. And I have cleaned up the business for all the people. And I have been that supportive person and woman and someone who was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll be in the background to y'all for. And I've done it in so many crews and so many labels and for so many people. And you know this, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, you and I have done work together, and I've helped you, and it's never a thing of like, oh, he better get on his. No, whatever that. It's like I want you have a place where you're educating youth and mentoring them in audio and sound. That was inspirational for me. Why I started this GoFundMe is I want to mentor these women who are a couple generations younger than me. They're in their 20s and 30s because I don't want them to be 46. Hating their life because they never got to do their shit. I want them to do their shit now, and I want them to make money doing it. I want them to have equal pay for men. Like my sis Sovereign, Ren, the one I've been brokering the beats for, I'm gonna get her up to a price where back in the day you used to hear DJ Premier used to get $16K for a track type of thing, that type of thing. I'm gonna get her to that price if my life depends on it. And men probably aren't even getting that kind of money for beats anymore. But like Jay-Z said, you gotta tax people for what they did to the Cold Crush. I gotta tax them for what they did to the Sequence, and then one more in the fucking 4+1 more, and I gotta tax them for what they did to Sylvia Robinson, and I gotta tax them for what they did to Cindy Kool Herc's sister, because we don't never ever get the respect for laying the foundation for being man. We've been in the her story in the history of this since the beginning. Kool Herc wouldn't have done no parties and all the old extra stuff if it wasn't for his sister, her ingenuity, the idea that she had using her school clothes money to throw the jam and the party. That's a story that every child needs to read that in a history book. And I'm here to make sure while there's still breath in my body that those stories get told, and all these stories women in hip hop get told. And you know, this artist that I have Ren working with where she has the placement, I'm not going to name the name yet because it's not public, but he's been rocking since the 80s. And I asked him, I said, when before have you worked with any female producers? Like you've probably been around Coco Chanel and Nikki D. And he was like, no, never.
Wow.
End of sentence. I asked Hellraiser from Sons of Man. I said, yo, Razor, I said, when have you worked with any women producers before? Ever in all the times being around Wu-Tang or being in your groups or coming out as Hellraiser or the new entity that you have, Razor Rubies, like in all those years and all those decades, did you ever work with any female producer? Never. If I asked everybody in Hyro, did y'all ever work with any female producer before? I mean, they had Guapale singing on the label. They were down with Dream Nefra, and I have to big up Dream in the Bay Area. She had the first label that I ever saw a woman have, which was called Hatshepsut, and there's some vinyl floating around somewhere with that name on it of hers. And she was always there in the ciphers, rapping and battling against these fools and killing them. She came from a Boston, Massachusetts type of area because she was down with Edo G. And I don't remember exactly when she got to the Bay, but I definitely have to big her up because when I was a teen, just coming into the Bay Area, she was already having a label and she was already rhyming. And Shayla from Daughters of Mary Jane, Holly Softly, she's come under a lot of different names and different entities. She was around in those days too. And the same thing, killing it. Like she knew the music business and she could rap just as good as any man that I ever heard rap in the Bay. And she could cipher and she could battle and she could sing and she was beautiful. And you know what I'm saying? People don't know her name all around the world. People don't know Dream's name all around the world. People don't know my name all around the world yet. But when I tell you I have this one co-production credit now, like I said, Noah's on it, but it features Wise Intelligent from PRT. So it's Fortes, me, Noah, and Wise Intelligent on a label that I help own and operate. And this is just a little co-production. Like I said, Def Jeff is, teaching me the
Nah, that's
ropes.
hard though.
But I'm about to come, like, what is it now? It's about to be September. My plan is no later than November, I'm going to come with the instrumental record, and I'm going to start selling packs, and it's going to be just me, just Noor Science. You see the name Noor Science? No, that's Waleja also. That's Miranda Jane also. That's Buell Neidlinger, the famous jazz bass player's daughter also. Know all of that, because I feel like men have tried to keep me out of it, because like right behind you, all those records, a lot of men might maybe be able to keep that many records in their memory and in their database and in the brain inside, and like know that, okay, that has that drum loop and I know the name of that one, and oh, A+ used Billy Cobham Heather to make 93 Till Infinity. A lot of men know some of those things. They might have a certain area in that for their mind, but I've had people tell me, like Domino from Hieroglyphics, who's like a Beatles expert and like a James Brown and all the related entities aficionado, like he's a musicologist. He told me, yo, I think you might know more music than I do. Well, damn. Maybe I do, maybe I don't, but damn. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's some shit right there. And all these experiences that I've talked about in this interview, and all these artists that I've worked with, and the ones my father worked with, and this is DNA, and this is in my DNA. So to me, that's the main mission right now, is getting to where I'm producing on my own, to where nobody can ever say, oh, so what, she told somebody what sample to use, or she worked with this fool, or what, she ain't shit, she can't do it, da da da. Like, I want to make them all the same way. When I asked them, have you ever worked with a woman producer, I want them to just be quiet, like, man, because all of them have a story. All of them know I asked them to teach me Ableton. I asked you to teach me Reason. I asked me, could you show me how Logic works? Can you show me the MPC? Can I stand over your shoulder and watch you do it? Can I, when you're done, can I just look at the SP and just see how does it work, and what are the buttons? And can I watch you do a Pro Tools session? I'll sit quietly in the back, like I always do anyway, but can I just watch? And every time, year after year after year, it was my father telling me, no, you can't do it. Women aren't able. You in particular are not good enough, and you'll never be able to do this. He told me, I'll pay for you to go to San Francisco State, but I won't pay for you to go to audio engineering school, which is what I really wanted to do. And he was like, there are no women producers. There are not women engineers. Women don't do that. Women can't do that. And especially you can't do it. And I had a lot of men tell me that in their own way over the years, famous men, amazing producers, people that I just am huge fans of, legends, because I've been in the studios with them, and I've been there cleaning the ashtray and picking up the empty beer bottles, damn. And so because of all that and all these years in the game, I've been in it since I was 13, and I'm 46. So these next 4 years, it's about to be about whatever beats I can make and whatever astounding things I can do with music. I might also sing. I might not. I might rap. I don't want to rap. Don't make me rap. I don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? But I want to manage women. I want to teach them. I want to mentor them. I have my 3 ladies already that I'm down with, and whatever they need, I'm going to do it for them, do it for their careers. I want to get their prices up. I want to make it to where the same way you would book DJ D-Nice to DJ and you would pay him a certain amount. I don't want Nah-Lib to DJ for less than that amount. Why should she? She's not only amazing and a graduate of Beat Junkies Institute of Sound, but she's also bad and beautiful, and everybody will want to watch her just stand there and be beautiful. But no, she also took the time and the money and the energy to teach herself and go to school to be the best DJ possible. And now she's in her own creativity, getting her own crates together, figuring out what she want to do. She might end up producing. She might end up, scratching on a lot of records and things like that. And why shouldn't she? You know what I'm saying? Why? Because no woman has been allowed to rise above a certain level in these days and times. Like, no woman has. And I'm just here to stop all that. Even if they don't, and they probably won't let me win. And they probably won't let me make any money. They probably won't let me get those kind of reviews like, damn, a woman made this beat and it's better than shit than these person made or that person made. Like, they're not ever going to give me the flowers while I'm here ever in my life. And I've been knowing that, because they never gave me the flowers with the magazine shit. They never gave it to me with the A&R credits. They never gave it to me with the label work. They never gave it to me with anything that I've done ever. And I'm used to it in my life. But for these younger women, I'm not going to have them to be my age, because I'll be in my 70s by then. I'm not going to have them calling me like, I can't get work and I'm not getting paid and they won't let me in the door. No, I swear to God, if I have to die, if somebody decides I hate this bitch so much, I'm gonna kill this bitch. If they do that, fine, make me a martyr for the shit, because I'm gonna teach all these women. And then when the women are learned, we're going to teach girls, and we're going to get younger and younger until I have 5-year-old girls in the class. Whether they have a little iPad or they have a little SP404, that's my word. As long as I'm alive and can still breathe, Islam. If I can still breathe, even if I'm sitting in a chair and can't move, and I have this Zoom at my disposal and all the equipment and all the things that I'm trying to build right now, I will be teaching people's granddaughters how to produce so that they don't have to live the life that I lived at the hands of my father, and lightweight at the hands of almost every male artist and entity that I've ever worked with or for. In the same way I love my father and honor him, I love everyone from Hieroglyphics. I love Doom and Grim and everyone from that era that I worked with. I love almost everyone that I've ever worked with, from the smallest, most least known MC all the way up to the most famous, the most platinum, the most illustrious and illuminated ones, and everyone in between. I love them all as my brothers, or whatever it was role that they played in my life. It's not that I don't have the love. You know what I'm saying? It's that I don't think that they were capable of showing the love in return. And it doesn't matter to me if they don't show it to me or they don't show it to these women that I'm working with, as long as they show it to their daughters. If you have a physical daughter, or if you're raising another woman's daughter, first of all, take your music money and put it into an account for her. So when she gets time to go to school, that their money is there for her to go to school. I don't care if it's your physical child or a child you're raising. I don't care if you have 6 baby mamas and 12 children. Whatever the girls have, give them more. Give them extra attention. Give them extra love. Let them be more creative. Sit there as soon as they're a baby, bring them into the lab with you, like you've done. Bring them into the lab with you. Have them around. Tell them that they're great. Tell them that they're special. Tell them that they're loved, that their creativity matters. And then when it comes time for them to educate and elevate to the point of professional level, pay them. Even if you're the dad and you manage them, even if you're as hard on them as Michael Jackson, daddy was on the Jackson 5, make sure they get paid right. Make sure the industry respects them. Make sure they're protected so that they can't be sexually harassed and raped and domestic violence and all that type of shit that be happening to women in the industry. And that's a whole other podcast. But I'm talking about protecting and respecting, if not even the women around you, if not your mother, if not your wife, if not your sisters and your cousins, if you can't somehow grasp that you need to respect and protect them, at the very least, take care of your daughters, raise them up, train them up for them to be the ones who are the next creative people and the ones who can change the whole entire sound of music and art and culture and just the feel. I know you could feel it in your heart right now because you're a real dad with beautiful daughters, and you've always been a great father, and you've always had your children around your music and around your creativity. So your brain is like, how could somebody keep their child from it and also kind of be so mean to their child behind it? You don't have a fathomable thought about how that could be. And that's what I'm trying to end, is whoever hates their mama or hates the feminine aspect of their self or whatever it is, hates their sister, hates their baby's mother, whatever it is, if I can, my words or my actions or the actions of my daughters and my grandchildren, not my physical ones because I have none, but the people that I'm trying to teach and get involved in this sort of thing, if something we do or say or a music that we make can change the feeling and the energy and give them that thing that they need to flip that switch to where like, damn, my mom wasn't so good to me, but I could be a great dad to my daughter. Oh, she likes the piano, she likes the drums, she wants to be in the studio with me. Instead of yelling at her and being like, get out of here, you're going to mess up something, you're going to ruin something. Stop what you're doing music-wise for a minute, sit with your daughter and learn her something. Play a record for her. Let her touch something on the keyboard. Let her have the drumstick and hit something. You never know what creativity you're stifling when you start doing your babies like that. And so most people, I don't see them do their sons like that. And that's what I want to speak with, and that's what I want to end with is, man, if you have daughters, do your daughters right. And from now on, I want to focus on my shit, but I also want to help women, and I want to help get this educational thing going, same as what you're doing at your studio and you're teaching. But I have to focus just on young ladies, girls and young ladies and young women, because I'm a woman. And all these things that we've talked about, that has to be my focus. It's not that I hate men or that I'm telling y'all, I helped you for 30 years, now go somewhere and no, nothing like that. And I will still help a man with business if they have a daughter or a niece they're raising or some another woman's child that they're taking care of, a daughter. You know, they can hit me up. They can reach out to me. I'll either give them a fair price or I'll do like I usually do and work for free. And I'll do it on the strength. Why? Because by the time I leave, you will have made a bank account for your daughter. And when she's still a child that you're putting little money into, so she has an account for college, you'll have your royalties in your daughter's name so that if you do pass away, it'll automatically go to her. And I'm not saying don't also take care of your sons. I'm saying the son's been taken care of for generations and generations. We haven't had to worry about the boys. I want people to know that we do need to be worried about the girls right now, and we need to make the girls our focus. We need to teach them and uplift them and give them the love and support that they need, and also money. Like the same way you'll go in your pocket and you'll pay a male producer $500 to make a beat. Why would you pay a woman producer less?
Crazy. Yo.
All right.
I
have a Rosebud and Tajay conference call like right now. So I didn't even know I had talked so long. But you'll cut it up and top it, and I'll give you links. And did I say too much or did I say enough?
That was perfect. That was perfect. I was all the way. That was what I was looking for. Thank you for taking time out. This, that, and the third, and then we'll get all the Instagram and all that. And yeah, like that was what I was looking for. I appreciate it. Tell Tajay I said what's up with it.
Thanks for the platform. I love everybody. Peace and love.
I'm gonna talk to you soon.
All right. Down and gone.
Easy.
Peace.
Easy.